Hello and welcome back to Thursdays Live a little bit later than usual. We are joined by a very special guest this evening. Feels weird saying this evening rather than this lunchtime. But a good friend of mine who quite recently took on one of our events for the first time, which is very exciting, and also an event that we were holding for the first time. So lots to talk about with that. But we're going to have a little bit of a natter through her experience, through her training, through her nutrition. We've had lots of questions in from you guys. Oh, she's a pro. She's already requested. If you guys have any questions whilst we're live, please do put them in the comments and we'll do our best to answer them and get to any that haven't already been asked. Oh, hi!
Hello!
Oh, you look so presentable and I look so unpresentable.
Oh my god, stop it. You look like you've caught the sun though. I'm very jealous.
That was last weekend where apparently all I was thinking about was Josh Patterson and Snacker Jacks and I did not think about sun cream.
Oh no.
It's not myself.
Oh, well, it will turn to tan. It will be lovely as long as it's not sore. Oh my, oh. It looks like tan from here.
Yeah, it's not sore, but it's not attractive. The ones on the back of my legs from socks also not that attractive. But I'm okay with it, you know. I'm okay with it. It's gonna
perks of the job.
Yeah, it's gonna fade out. It's gonna fade out. I remember the whole way around being like, Josh, you need to put sun cream on. Josh, you need to put sun cream on. Then I finished and I was like, cool. I need to put sun cream on. Wow. That went downhill for me quickly. But who'd have thought Ireland would have brought 22-degree heat?
I know. His challenge was incredible though, wasn't it?
Yeah, he did so well. He did amazing. I mean, we always knew that mentally he would get through because he's literally the toughest person I know. But I think it was just a little bit of logistics, obviously physical. Anything could have gone wrong with his body. And it turns out it did, but he just, just ignored it.
Yeah, just pushed through.
Bless him. His list of war wounds are impressive, but he'll be fine. He's in good hands. I'm sure he'll recover very quickly. I hope. Anyway.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Well, we shall get chatting. We've had loads of questions sent in and a few more as well since I sent you them, but quite a few repetitive ones. So as I said, guys, if you've got any, please do put them in the comments and we'll do our best to get to them as we go through. But we'll get going by, for anyone who doesn't know who you are, please do introduce yourself.
Hello, so my name is Steph Elswood and I have been a fitness influencer and lifestyle influencer for about 5 years now, which makes me feel very old. I also have my own charitable event series called Stay Sassy and my own sustainable brand called Sastainable.
All very in line with being sassy. And as you said, you've been a fitness and lifestyle influencer now for 5 years, but running is obviously something that's quite new, or at least new to you doing as like race or competitively. It's always kind of been something a bit on the back burner. But it is most definitely not that anymore since you recently took on one of our events, which was our Spring Trail series, our first single stage event, and you took on the half marathon, which was a very tough course. You know better than I do, but tell us a little bit about the event and how you found it.
I mean, you can vouch for me on this that I did hardly any running. You've tried to get me running for the last however many years I've known you. But the course was tough, and I mean, I'm doing the London Marathon in October and I kind of didn't want to throw myself completely in at the deep end. My boyfriend is a massive Ultra X fan. He's done pretty much every event you've held since he found out about you. And do you know what? I think I was obviously inspired by what he did, but some of the challenges that you hold seemed so unachievable to me because they're over a few days or really long or whatever. So when this came up with the 10k, it was 10k, a half marathon, and then the 50k, and then the 100k, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And when I saw that, I was like, okay, 10k I think I could do. I think half marathon would be a challenge, and Lewis kind of encouraged me and kind of poked me to sign up. And I was like, okay, let's do this. And I'm not gonna lie, I didn't realize it was a trail when I signed up because I don't do my research, I just say yes. And it was tough, like the elevation was tough, but the atmosphere And obviously all the training gets you hyped as well, doesn't it? But I think the atmosphere was just so inspiring. I never in a million years, my purpose was just finish, because I'm so new to running, because it doesn't come naturally to me. I was like, I just need to finish. And yeah, it was an exciting day, but it was just, the event was held so well. It was just seamless and spectacular throughout. And it just, in all of my photos from the professional cameras, I was so focused on finishing, I didn't even know there was cameras. I'm just smiling the whole time, and I was like, who runs with a grin on their face when they're by themselves in the woods, knee deep in mud? Like, I just can't believe I enjoyed it that much. In all honesty, I thought I was dreading it, because I was like, I didn't feel physically fit enough. But it was such an incredible atmosphere. You couldn't help but love it.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing, and probably you know better than I do from Lewis that like it's sort of what brought him into the events, in that I think so many people have this idea of a running race in their head, and they're probably thinking of something like London Marathon, where there's hundreds of thousands of people and there's a load of elites and there's a lot of people taking it very seriously, and obviously actually at London Marathon you actually do meet incredible people and people do chat in the start pens, but I think people build up an idea of this slightly daunting, serious environment that doesn't perhaps allow for people who aren't in it to win it type thing. And actually that's so far from the truth, especially at our events and lots of other incredible race organizations that put on similar events. And it was so nice to hear you say that you actually kind of sort of felt at home, like you didn't feel out of place, you didn't feel like you were like a stranger coming into this wild community of people who just run all day. Actually, you were welcomed and you were supported and you were kind of cheered, and the aid stations encompass all of that.
Yeah, and I think it's also the people that had obviously done events before were literally just stood there with open arms, ready to welcome anyone, whether it was at the start line, the finish line, halfway through, during. And I think because you're all on this journey together, whatever part of the race you're doing, whatever distance you're doing, everyone kind of understands the struggle that comes with it, the training that you've had to do to get you there, and the celebration of like crossing that finish line. So the whole thing, like the friendliest people I've ever met, honestly. Like, I feel like I made friends for life just literally in the queue to get past her afterwards. It was great.
we do food well, and I completely agree. And that's obviously that's the environment we want to create, whether you're at a 250-kilometer race in the middle of the desert or a 21, 50, 100-kilometer race in Hazelmere. Like that community is so strong. And I also think as soon as you sort of enter an ultra community, it's very different to when you enter like an actual racing community as such, because time is just so irrelevant. No matter what distance you're doing, it really is, because you will run a totally different time on that course, which was, hilly, super boggy, super muddy, quite technical in some areas, than you would obviously over a half marathon around Battersea Park. So that pressure is immediately lifted, because everyone is literally there, like you say, to get to the end, to enjoy it. And the community is great, and that is partly thanks to people like Lewis who turn up to every event and make other people do the same. But it was so nice to hear you experience that, because obviously I've known you for a little while, and running has always been a little bit of a a chore as such, prior to you kind of stepping into the marathon. And I think not rightly so, but if I was going into a CrossFit event or something, the training for me would be, I'd be scared, I'd be nervous, I'd dread it, I'd probably put it off, I'd create this massive thing in my head about how much I didn't want to do it, without actually really letting myself be open to enjoying it. And it was so nice to hear that you did enjoy it, and I saw you at the end and you looked absolutely fine, and the sprint finish you put on at the end was incredibly impressive for someone who'd never done a half marathon and had just run an incredibly technical course. So it was amazing to see. Let's talk a little bit about your training. We've touched on that kind of briefly. I know the fantastic Ben Parker, who is a partner of ours at Run Buddy, did your plan. So tell us a little bit about that, because I think it's really nice to hear that actually you don't have to run every day, and you don't need to be running hundreds of miles a week. That is absolutely not the case with these long distance events. Actually, you've got to do what works for you.
Yeah, so when I started speaking to Ben, I kind of just like, look, at the moment I don't really enjoy running. I'm signed up to these 2 events and I just need to finish, like, help me. And he was like, yeah, sure. He was like, what experience do you have? And I was like, none. Like, I literally, none. I don't even run for a bus, like, help me. And when he kind of put me through the system of the Run Buddy, and I could see that you could select how many days a week you want to run. I was like, oh, so I'm not going to be running all the time then. He's like, no, it fits around you, it fits around your schedule, you don't want to see it as a chore. So I was like, okay. So I chose twice a week to run because I thought, you know what, that's realistic. I don't want to just be all excitable now whilst I'm signing up and then be like, oh, this is just not going to work.
Yeah.
So I chose twice a week, and I was shocked that that was even an option, but I was really happy about it. And then my plan was so exciting because I did, on a Wednesday, I had a different kind of sprints or interval session every week, which is a style of training I wasn't used to. I hadn't really done before. I'd done like intervals on a treadmill, but maybe not on the road or on a trail or anything like that, or on hills. And then my weekend run, I could choose between a Saturday or a Sunday, was always a longer distance. And that was exciting too, because you can kind of track your progress and get longer every week, and it still feels as hard, but you get further every week. So that was really nice to kind of check in once a week. And Ben was amazing. If I needed anything on WhatsApp, if I missed a run, he'd catch me up and stuff like that. And I still love lifting weights and doing kind of HIIT stuff and that kind of vibe, and that's where my passion lies, although running is starting to come into that a little bit more. So I kept up some of that as well, making sure that I wasn't overtraining or overdoing it, but it meant that I could get the 2 runs in that I needed to do and train in a way that I love doing as well. And I felt really strong on race day, and obviously it was a struggle, but like you said, I kind of went into the race with no ego. I just wanted to finish. I know I'd done all the training, so it was just so nice to actually just throw myself into it and have the knowledge of Ben behind me kind of being like, you've done the hard part, just go and finish it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also what you were saying about, there's something quite incredible when you're training for your first sort of longer distance event, in that you run further than you ever have, week after week after week. And actually, if you say that out loud, that sounds terrifying and it sounds daunting and it sounds, it sounds a little bit mad, but actually you do it and your body does it. And it's amazing that your body can kind of adapt in that way. And like you said, obviously it feels a little bit harder, but you do get stronger, and race day for you kind of really proved that. And I think it's a really nice thing for people out there who are thinking about doing an event, that you don't have to run hundreds of miles, like a lot of us as such like running. So for me, being able to run 4 or 5 times a week is what I choose to do, but it's not for everyone, and people like to factor in their own types of training, and these events can accommodate for that. You just have to be a little bit smart with it. Okay, let's take some questions that were sent in. This one actually came up a lot, and I know that you actually covered it on a post, I believe, or in a story. I do remember seeing it. What did you eat during the run?
So I think I was a little naive going into the run, because I was like, it's only a half marathon. How hard can it be? I've had a massive breakfast. I had like a pre-run snack, like what would I need kind of thing. So I had a little race vest on, all the gear, no idea. And I had some sweets with me. I had some lemon squash, and I had some electrolytes in my water and things like that. And I was happy for the first half of the run, just snacking on my sweets. And I was trying not to look at my watch, and just like, I know that, what's it called, like aid station is halfway through. I just want to get there without checking my watch, without any pressure or whatever. And when I got there, I didn't realize how hungry I was. So luckily there was a massive spread, and I'm plant-based, so I literally was like, oh my god, is malt-loaf vegan? And there was someone so helpful there running to look at labels, and she was like, yeah, it's all good to go. So I shoved a banana down, shoved down some malt-loaf, refilled my drinks, and then off I went. And I had my sweets in my pack for emergencies as well, and that set me up, and it was amazing. Like that malt-loaf and that banana saved me. I was like, I'm good to go.
Yeah, absolutely. These races are essentially walking picnics, which is probably why I enjoy them so much. But it's so important that people recognise that actually, not only are you out there for a long distance, 21 kilometres is a long way, but also because of the technical course, because of the crazy mud, because of the hills, you're actually out there a lot longer than you might be if you're over a flat 21 kilometres. So obviously you're going to be hungry, because you're moving for a longer period of time. And actually recognising that, and actually great that you're able to obviously grab something that worked for you, and that got you to the end in one piece. What advice would you give someone looking for the confidence to sign up to their first half? And maybe, first any race. It doesn't have to be half, it could be a 5K, it could be 100K.
Do you know what? I think if I hadn't have signed up to something, I wouldn't have committed to the training. If I was like, oh, do you know what? I'll start training and then I'll see how I feel about booking onto a race. I probably wouldn't have done it, because the one day you have a bad race, or the one day you have like a struggling, not a race, a training session or a bad run or something, it might knock your confidence a little bit. But because I knew I had this in the diary, I knew I had to be strict with my training because I wanted to finish it. I knew that I'd signed up for something and I was working towards something. And that was kind of like my motivation. And you don't have to sign up to something as strenuous as a half marathon trail. You could have done the 10K. And like you said, it's so inclusive that there are people that do it for time, but there are people that just want to finish it. Like I was in maybe the 6th kind of start point. Whatever that's called. I don't know anything technical, but I was just chatting to people and they were like, yeah, we're just excited to finish. And I'd seen everyone else go off that was actually racing it. And it's so inclusive that once you're booked in, once you've got your training plan, you can actually enjoy it. And yes, you're going to be nervous on the day because it's fear of unknown, but most of the hard part is done in the training. And I think booking on is the motivation.
100%. That race is just the victory lap, really. And whatever happens on that day, it shouldn't affect how hard you've worked in the run up to, because you know sometimes races don't go to plan, and sometimes they do feel really hard, and sometimes you know that you don't have the performance you want, but that isn't always a reflection of the hard work you've put in the lead up to this event. Because you know I watched you train hard and you committed to those sessions and you worked really hard on them, you followed your plan, and you know it paid off on race day. So I think you're 100% right in saying by committing, it's almost like a deal with yourself to like take on that training plan, or to commit to those runs or commit to those sessions, whatever it might be. So in short, I think it's just sign up.
Yeah.
I think this one was quite a relevant one. I really want to like running, but I'm struggling to find enjoyment in it. Do you have any tips?
Do you know what? That was me. Up until probably a week before the race, it was kind of like, oh, I'm not enjoying this. But I think with running, your body just grows and adapts so quickly. Even if you run like 1K more, or even like half a K more or something, you'll do one run that just feels amazing, whether the weather is good or you've got a good playlist on or you go with friends or something. You will start to enjoy it. I think the more your body adapts and the more it kind of gets used to moving in that way and for that length of time or for that distance. But I think it is just from going in with no expectation and no ego. Like, don't go out every time and think you're going to reach a PB, or don't go out every time trying to beat your last run, because it's not about that. It's about celebrating what your body can do. And I think I suffered with that when I first started, thinking that I needed to run the whole distance, and thinking that if I stopped to walk, then I was a failure. Whereas it's kind of doing it in small increments and celebrating that you're actually out and running. Like, how lucky are we that our bodies can do this? And I think the more you have that mindset and that mentality, the more you'll get out and run, and also the more you'll find the enjoyment in it. But also an Ultra X race will make you a little addicted to running too.
They are pretty good at that. I mean, I did an Ultra X race and then I now work for them, so fell hard and fast. Also, two things on that. I think it's so nice that what you were saying about kind of falling in love with the process and falling in love with the fact that it's so nice to be able to track and watch your body get stronger. And there's so many things that there's so many ways of doing that can actually be quite negative. For example, weight loss. You know, so many people determine their kind of fitness worth on how much weight they've lost, when actually with running you take all of that away and it really becomes about what your body can do, rather than what it can't do, which is actually such a nice feeling. And you know this, having crossed that half marathon line, you're so grateful for everything that it's endured, because it hasn't just you know done a 20-minute walk, or it hasn't just done kind of something relatively small. Actually, you've run for well over 2 hours across an incredibly technical course, and you're still smiling, and your body's still holding itself together, you know. And obviously a lot of that is adrenaline as well, but it's so incredible what your body can do. And I think the other thing that's important to know is running's hard. Like, it's really hard. When you are running, you are essentially throwing your body against the floor for hours and hours and hours. Like, that is literally what you're doing. You are slamming it against a hard floor for hours and hours and hours. And you've got to be pretty resilient, you know, physically and mentally, obviously, to put up with that. And it's quite cool that your body allows you to do that. Like, you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't just jump up and slam your body against the floor because it would really hurt. But essentially that is what you're doing, and your body is cushioning you and protecting you and allowing you to continue to put one foot in front of the other. So I think it's important to recognize that it is hard, like lots of other physical activity. It is hard, it is challenging, but actually it's cool when your body proves to you that actually you're a lot stronger than you think. Okay, where am I? That's another good one. And actually we don't get much of this in kind of general Q&As, and I wonder if that's because a lot of our Q&As are, you know, already sort of have long been involved in the running community, and therefore this isn't really a thing, and no one really thinks about it. And I think you'll agree with me that actually now you've done a race, you can recognize that actually people don't really think like this. But someone has asked, how do you not compare yourself to other runners?
I think because I am such a newbie and I'm such a beginner, I can only compare myself to myself, because anyone else that I see running has been doing it for a long time, or finds it easy or natural and things like that. And I think you've just got to, it's just removing that expectation of yourself. And I mean, it obviously depends. I think my Wi-Fi just cut out, but I'm back. I think it obviously depends on why you're running. So if you are running it to win the race, then obviously there is an element of competitiveness and competition with those around you. But I think when you get into this community, you'll see that everyone is just so excited for each other. Like when I told a few people that it was my first race, they were like, "That's amazing. How did you find it?" And was so there to celebrate me. There was no comparison. I didn't find anyone going, "What was your time?" Like I thought that's what it would be like, and I'd have to be like, "Oh," do you know what I mean? And like lie about it. I don't know. But no one said that. They were just like, "Congratulations, that's amazing. How did you find it?" We were joking about the mud. We were joking about the hills. Oh, what about this point of the race and all of that? And I think that's what it's about. It's the kind of community feeling of all going through that same journey. Doesn't matter how long it took you. Doesn't matter if you did backflips the whole way. Like as long as you cross that line, you're in that community. Even if you don't finish, you're in that community. And I think that's what it's all about. So it's just removing ego and expectation from yourself, and then you're not going to compare to anyone anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, the community just almost doesn't really allow for it. You know, there's so many things that that are worth so much more when you do these types of events, like the course, like the tricky bits, like the aid stations, like the snacks that you needed. You know, all of that is so much a bigger focus for this community, because they do it for enjoyment and for passion. And even if you speak to the guys, you know, the guys at the top of the game, you speak to the Carlas of our races, you know, who do win, should have exactly the same conversation with you. There would be no like, "Oh, well done," you know, like there's no patronizing or anything like that. It's exactly the same conversation. I've just noticed we've had two people ask basically, how would you train for this type of event? We did cover this a little bit further back. So if you guys want to rewatch it, then Steph talks a little bit about her training plan on there. Okay. And actually someone has asked, how would you prepare? And actually this came up in a question, sort of, saying, "I'm thinking of signing up to the Summer Trail series, which is our next race in this series. What advice would you give me to prepare well?" Apologies, my laptop's talking to us.
To prepare, it would definitely be getting a good plan in place, just so that you kind of know what you're doing and things like that. I think UltraX sent out some really good emails in regards to kind of a kit list for each race that you do as well, because obviously what you need for a 10k is going to differ to what you need for a 100k. Obviously don't ask me any questions about 100k because I've not done one, but not yet. But the kit list would obviously differ. I think I kept referring to it as a dress rehearsal, which my mum very quickly corrected me, it was not. But like, if I went out on a few runs wearing the kit that I'd wear on the actual race day, and I kept calling them dress rehearsals just to make sure nothing rubbed, to make sure that it felt comfortable. Obviously I had like a hydration vest and things like that, and obviously that's not normal or natural, so it was like learning to run with boobs because I'm so flat chested, and that took a bit of adapting. And so I think
fun though, right?
Pardon?
Fun though, right?
Yeah, so fun. I was like, this is what boobs feel like. Yeah. And also practicing, I know it sounds silly, but practicing eating whilst you're running as well. Like, all of that comes within the training plan, and obviously as your longer runs get longer, kind of incorporating that in. But I think the kind of finding the right shoes that work for you and the right plan, I think, is kind of was my main focus.
Yeah, 100%. And I think touching on the practicing what you eat, it's so important. Obviously you were able to grab a banana or whatever, and at our events we do have food on aid stations. This is actually a new thing. We don't usually have food on aid stations, but practicing what you eat, because obviously you don't really want to try something new on the day just in case it upsets your stomach, because 10k is quite a long way with an upset stomach. So definitely practicing those bits and bobs, and the Summer Trail series hopefully won't be as muddy, but it is still quite hilly, and some nice kind of technical bits in there. Worth noting that there is no 10k at the Summer Trail series. It's just 21, 50 and 100. My phone's got no battery. Okay, gonna pick a few to round us up. Biggest learning from training for this type of event?
I think the main thing I learned is that you don't have to be an athlete to be involved. And also you don't have to run every day of the week. You can fit it around your schedule, your ability, and kind of your interests too. I think one thing that's been really nice is obviously my boyfriend runs, but I could do what I'd call his slow pace long run on one of his recovery runs, so you can kind of incorporate it into more of a social thing. Or there's loads of run clubs, especially in London now, so say one of your training runs was a 5k, like making that one of your training runs. And I think my biggest learning thing as well is, this is something I said always on my stories, was you can do hard things. And that was kind of my mantra, that even if I needed to walk for 5 minutes in the middle of a run, like I was still moving, I was still progressing forwards, like I can do this hard thing. And I'd say running, the more I got into it, was more of a mental thing than a physical thing, because I was so used to early on in my training, like running, walking, that I'd kind of slip into those habits when I was a little bit tired. But then mentally I'd be like, no, you can do this, you ran this distance last week, let's go again. So I think it was exciting to see the mental resilience that I had throughout training and the race itself. So I feel like I learned a lot about myself through the run, if that's not too deep.
No, 100%. I think these races and these challenges and these experiences, I have the emotional intelligence of a cornflake, but going to Jordan, which was the first Ultra X event and the only Ultra X event, no, one of two events I have done, honestly completely changed the way I thought about myself. I thought about my work. I thought about my kind of resilience, because you take yourself back to those kind of tough moments in the race and actually recognize that whatever that day is presenting you, it's not as hard as that, and you can do it. And you get back to thousands of emails in your inbox and you're like, well, I got this, I just ran a marathon in the desert or whatever. Like, it teaches you so much about yourself, and actually really teaches you to step away from like the outside stresses of life, I think, because during that race nothing else matters. In fact, during that day, really nothing else matters. You are not thinking about who's texted you, who's emailed you, what work you have to do. You are literally in this weird little Ultra X or whatever event it is bubble where nothing else even comes into play, and it's actually a really, really, really nice place to be. Probably why I now work for them, because I get to do it all the time, take myself away from my phone. But it's a really nice feeling, I think, and it does teach you a lot, like you say, about yourself. Okay, final question. We ask this on every live that we do, and I think I know the answer for what's immediately next for you, because we know that you are doing London Marathon this year, which is very exciting, and very gutted that I can't come and whoop and cheer. But let's talk post London Marathon, or going into the next few years. What are you thinking? Are you thinking you might continue some long distance running, or are you thinking you might take a step back into where your original passions lie? And I think that's really important to discuss, because I think people feel like once they become a runner, they're then a runner and that's it, and they can't do anything else. And actually that's not the case at all. So whilst obviously secretly we're hoping you're going to say, oh yeah, Lewis has convinced me to do the Azores, it would be cool to hear what you're thinking might kind of follow this newfound passion for running.
I think my training so far to this point has definitely taught me that there's room for both. There's room for the kind of more weightlifting that I'm passionate about, the dance side of things, and the running training. So I'm not going to suddenly turn into someone that's going to do a big challenge every week or every month or anything like that. But fingers crossed all goes okay with the London Marathon. I would love to have a go at a 50, because we're basically there. If I can do a London Marathon, I can do a 50, and I'd love to try that challenge and then kind of see where it takes me. I think I'm really enjoying the running side of things and the community that's come with it. Even those that I didn't meet at the event, but maybe have been following my running journey or something like that, have really inspired me to kind of continue with this. So I'm probably still not going to call myself a runner, but I'm just going to enjoy the challenge and the training and see what events I kind of want to sign up for.
100%. And I think there's no need to put any pressure on yourself. I think people do these, longer distance events and then think they've got to keep increasing the distance. And as I said, whilst we're all for that and we love people to find passion in it, you don't have to keep going bigger at all. You could do Spring Trail Series next year and do the half marathon, and that would be great. There's no need to constantly jump and jump and jump and jump. If you're enjoying it, of course, challenge, test yourself. But I think people get so up, and I think it's where a lot of kind of endurance style bloggery type people go, because suddenly they just can't go any bigger. Like, what do you do when you run 500 marathons in 500 days? Like, do you run one? Like, it's just, you don't need to keep going bigger and keep going bigger. There's so many things you can do within this kind of endurance type world that are amazing to challenge and test you in totally different ways. But it's great.
I think even doing another half marathon but on a different course would be just as exciting, because when you're doing a trail run, especially, like this was my first ever trail run, not even like first ever event, it was my first ever trail run because I did all of my training on road, which I probably wouldn't advise, but here we are. And then like, you forget that there's beautiful views. Instead of looking at concrete and cars and crossing roads and worrying about that, like, you'll just turn a corner and suddenly you're in this gorgeous field in this hilly environment that all you can see is rolling hills, and you're just like wowed as you're running. It's amazing. And I think even to do the same distance on different courses is just as exciting, well, for me personally, as increasing the distance as well.
100%, because it'll challenge you in a totally different way, and teach you lots of different things about the way you run or the way you take on challenges. Well, Steph, it's been a total pleasure talking to you, and thank you so much for giving up your time this evening to share with us your Spring Trail Series kind of roundup. And we're very excited to have you back at Summer Trail Series, and who knows what will follow that with Lewis by your side. I'm sure I don't need to say too much. I'm sure he's already
he's in my ear constantly, don't worry.
all over it. But yeah, have a lovely evening, and I shall speak to you soon.
Thank you. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.